Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Welcome to another session of reading through Northern Lights. I am your host again, Pixel Broadside, otherwise known as Apinoy and Victoria. Welcome, welcome, welcome again. My apologies for the long interval before uploads. Life has been lifing right now. And this is kind of one of those quiet moments where I'm able to record. So let's try to make the most of it. Anyway, as usual, please sit back, relax, find maybe brew yourself a relaxing coffee, and let's proceed. We are still going to continue with chapter 5 of Sacrifice by Adele Wiseman. Let's begin. I should have known better, said Isaac, than to mention it to him. He sat with Ruth on her veranda steps and brooded over his latest argument with his father. The whole world could be descended from anthropoid apes, but my dad would still come straight from Adam. Ruth did not answer. She was looking at Mad Mountain. The hill, rising above the houses across the way, had already thrown off its day cloak and was wrapping itself in evening blue. Just such a dress Ruth wanted to sew for herself, that exact color. Contemplating it, she lost track for a moment of what Isaac was saying. And he'd be right too. I suddenly realized, talking to him, how silly I am. What did I want to get out of him? Why do I want to belittle his world? Did I think I could make myself feel more like a man by making my dad feel more like an ape? Ruth caught the last part. You are a man, she said, dropping her head for a moment on his shoulder and then raising it quickly again, shaking her short, dark curls. You think so? Isaac interrupted his train of thought for a moment to smile at her. He slipped his arm around her and pulled her down so that her head fell back on his shoulder. Ruth relaxed contentedly. Then he was off again. I may think that he's stubborn and narrow minded and old fashioned. I may feel that he's living in a world that's not the real world. But I don't know. Do I really see things he doesn't see? Or does he just see them in a different perspective? How long had she known him? She knew to the day. It was almost a year now since they had caught sight of each other at a party. Somebody's birthday party. The thin boy had been standing with his arms around another girl, looking down at her and talking. He had glanced up at her when her escort spoke to him. For a moment he hadn't closed his mouth from talking. Then, with a nervous movement, he had jerked his arm away from the other girl. She knew with a feeling that bordered on smugness that he hadn't put his arm around another girl since. He was so clever, so sweet, with his funny accent. Even though she'd been born here, she didn't know as many long words in English as he did. He read so much. He was interested in everything. And yet, he talked about the real world. Did he know about the real world? Here was the real world beside him. And what did he do? He lived in the real world. The real world was something close to him. It was something today and tomorrow. It was now. She knew the real world. She could feel things about it. It had been strange, the way she had felt something about that party even before she had gone to it. A way that she hadn't felt about any other party. And there he'd been, and the way she'd known that she would like his parents, and they'd like her, before they'd gone to the wedding a few months ago. She'd just known. It hadn't stopped her from being nervous about meeting them or anything. She just had that feeling over and above her nervousness and the way he'd talked to her beforehand and explained things about them. It had been enough to make her nervous. Still, she'd known. He was so funny sometimes with his real world. It's innocence, Isaac was saying. It's just as though a man were to build himself a grass hut at the North Pole and run around without any clothes on. But nothing would happen to that man because he didn't know he was at the North Pole. Now, if I came up to the North Pole in my polar bear skins and told him where he was, he wouldn't believe me and nothing would happen to him. But what if he did believe me? He'd die of the cold. That would be awful. But no one can live naked at the North Pole, even the innocent ones. He died anyway, without knowing what he had died of. And looking at him, even though I was wearing my polar bear skins, I died too, I think. Isaac was silent, not knowing where he'd led himself. Innocence, thought Ruth, turning her head slightly and breathing deliberately down his neck. That was the word for it. In the house, everything was disarranged. Isaac had got the sudden impulse that the whole place should be painted. The ceilings, he complained, seemed very low and gray. The house was old, it was true, but give it a bit of paint, new curtains, and a few other touches, and it would acquire an altogether new atmosphere. Sarah and Abraham exchanged quizzical glances during Isaac's tirade. They agreed solemnly. A freshly painted ceiling gave a room at least a foot in height. Abraham approached the landlord. The landlord thought it was a good idea, but expensive, and considering the rent they were paying, well, he didn't think he could manage it. This did not stop Isaac. He set to work on the ceilings himself. Abraham painted the woodwork that he didn't have to strain his arms too much to reach. Together, they repainted the kitchen and whitewashed the summer kitchen. Abraham painted the icebox and the old kitchen table. Sarah bought new curtains and a new bath mat. Isaac painted, if not the whole outside of the house, at least the window frames and the little wooden front fence. By the time they were finished, the house glowed. Even Isaac was satisfied. Abraham and Sarah sat back and waited. His machine in the shop, Isaac tried mentally to evaluate his role in life. It was passed to him from the cutter's table. He stitched it together rapidly. Speed, that's what counts in piecework. He was quick. The scraps fed into his machine and came out stitched, formed, ready for the next operation at the next machine. Every piece was a few cents. Zip, zip, 5 cents, zip, 7 cents, zip, 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 another dollar, another bundle. Was this what he was made for? Why should his father think that he was made for something better? Why did he feel that sometimes himself? Because he wanted to do something. He didn't know what. To work at something that would lead him somewhere, to discover, to create, not just pockets and facings day after day, to read, to teach. The boys that he prepared for bar mitzvah, there was something in that, to watch their minds work, to discover suddenly something about a boy that would win him over. Like Fat Schmeling, who had been given up by 3 Malomeds. Accidentally, almost by instinct, Isaac had hit upon a way to handle him. While his enormous mother listed her complaints about him, the child had sat stubbornly looking at the floor, his head resting on his double chin. Then Isaac had taken him into the living room. Well, Sam, let's forget what's past and begin again. There's a lot to learn. And that was it, nothing more. From then on, the boy had learned, and he was not stupid either. Schmilling, what could lock him more securely in his cage of fat, to be laughed at as though everything about him was funny, than a name like that in a land where it was meaningless, comically sound? To Isaac, the incident had been a revelation. With one word, he had given a small human being back his sense of dignity. Now, he could not help approaching each new pupil with a sense of curiosity, a delicacy, almost an excitement at what he might discover. All right, so he would like to teach, but what chance was there? As a full time private teacher, he could never support himself, let alone think of raising a family. As a teacher in the Hebrew and Yiddish school, well, he could live, but what chance had he of ever getting a job like that? Not much. They wanted somebody with bells on, somebody who would be recommended by someone noisy, not just a plain immigrant boy who worked in a factory and studied by himself at night. Would he end up like old Rusin then, who sat across him, glued to the machine, his hands trembling when the foreman shouted for more speed and he tried to hurry? He imagined himself an old man, bent over the machine, afraid to steal a moment to pause and crack a joke, resented by the other workers because he sometimes worked through his lunch hour and they thought he was trying to get ahead of them, picked on by the foreman because he was too slow. The foreman had it in for Rusin in particular because, though the boss was always yammering at him for more production, he wouldn't let him fire the old man. Every time he brought a prospective buyer to the factory, the boss pointed out that this was no ordinary sweatshop that worked on the principle of mass production at the price of good workmanship. Here, for example, was Rusin, one of the best old style craftsmen left in the city, at one of his machines, and not just turning out samples to fool buyers, turning out the actual goods. In his shop, it was quality first, speed second. Whenever the boss said that within hearing of some of the boys, they gave him the old ha ha, roaring their machines in rhythmic unison. 2 years ago, when they had struck for a return from piecework to a regular salary, he had closed down the shop until they had given. Quality first, but survival of the fleetest, Isaac told his father. He had gone on strike with the rest of them and had stood as a picket outside the shut down shop. The boss had gone to California on a holiday until the workers came to their senses. The strike had a bad effect on his nerves, and when his nerves were bad, he got carbuncles or something. Isaac had greatly admired the way Ned Strom had spoken to the workers, had urged them to hold fast. What would he himself not have given to have had a golden voice, a dauntless courage then? When the workers finally filed back into the shop again, Ned had not been with them. He was in jail for uttering threats. He himself had been a coward, Isaac knew, to feel secretly relieved that he hadn't uttered his threats loudly enough. The thought of his own cowardice filled him even now with shame. Screaming voices jerked Isaac out of his thoughts. They were fighting over the bundles again. When you finished a bundle, you went to the foreman's table and he gave you another. If he liked you, he gave you a bundle that you could make a few more cents on, one that required less complicated stitching, and you rushed with it back to your machine. Two girls had wanted to grab the same bundle, to run back and sew more belts. They were tugging at it and arguing shrilly. Jenny shouted that she had got there first. Bella screamed that Jenny already had three bundles hidden in her machine. Jenny yelled that Bella always got the better bundles because, as everyone knew, she was willing to do any filth with anybody to get them. The foreman shouted at both of them. The girls pulled at the bundle. It came apart, and the pieces scattered all over the floor. Jenny swooped after them. Bella turned and rushed over to Jenny's machine, and from under the box that Jenny kept beside her, pulled out two bundles. Aha! She shouted dramatically, waving the bundles for all to see. Jenny threw the pieces of the first bundle down on her machine and grabbed Bella by the hair. Bella screamed. The women began to take sides and shouted across them. The men sat and laughed. The foreman tried to get between the girls. What if the boss came in? Some of the workers who remembered that time was money regretfully started up their machines again, so that the variety of noises clashing together in the shop was deafening. Only Rusin had not stopped the steady pace of his work to look up, continued to stitch, a tight expression of distaste on his face. The foreman had finally separated the two girls. He stood in a semi crouch between them and hissed at them to get back to their machines. They would pay, he promised them. They would pay. What's all this? The boss's tenor voice shrilled across the room. The machines roared suddenly louder. The boss advanced slowly into Isaac's vision. So I have a foreman, a ballet dancer? The foreman straightened his knees and dropped his arms under the boss's sarcastic glare. What's the matter? The shrill tenor barked again. Is it tea time that you're all sitting around doing nothing? Isaac, with others, urged his machine to a more frantic tempo. Thieves! 10 rows, trying to soar above the machines. When it's low season, you rush through your work and cry because I don't give you enough work to do. Isaac pressed hard against the metal of the power machine. Others did the same. The boss's voice was momentarily drowned out. Odd words penetrated. Busy season. My few cents. You play. Every time his voice made a fresh attempt to climb the noise, the machines roared more loudly. Jenny and Bella were back at their respective machines, and the cloth was flying from their needles. Saboteurs! The boss was sure they were doing it deliberately. He would like to make them stop and force them to listen to him. But the money he'd lose. He'd pitted himself once more against the machines. I lost my hair over you. I worked my head off, and you're out to ruin me. The machines raced on. Pretend you didn't hear me. Moskovich! The machines slowed slightly because everyone wanted to hear what he said to the foreman. I'm telling you, if anyone so much as pauses to go to the toilet to smoke a cigarette, oh yes, I know why you go to the toilet. He had worked in a shop himself long ago, before piecework came in. I want them to thrown out, fired. We'll see if they find another boss like me to tolerate thieves and cripples. The boss stormed out. Moskovich started to prowl furiously around the shop. The machine settled into a steadier tempo. Finally, Moskovich stationed himself behind old Rusin. The old man's hands trembled as he guided the material into the machine. He did not stop working when the foreman spoke to him, but his furrowed, anxious face began to sweat. Leave him alone, thought Isaac. Leave him alone. For a moment he saw himself in Rusin's place, his back misshapen by the years of bending over the machine. Slow, even now he was sometimes tired, unable to feed the machine quickly enough to fill the bellies of his family, and not even a master craftsman to be kept on by a whim of the boss. The foreman continued to stand over the old man. All right, Isaac said out loud. Leave him alone. The neighboring machines paused suddenly. Isaac felt his body began to shake as though with a chill. His heart thudded irregularly. He stopped his machine. Leave him alone, he repeated, noticing to his amazement that he was almost shouting. When he left the shop, he was without a job. His heart still beat too quickly, so that he had to pause, leaning for a few moments against the wall of the building. But the fresh air smelled good. Only now he realized how he had hated the shop. Perhaps he might be able to get work doing something else. As his spirits calmed somewhat, on the way home he realized that there was not much chance, not in times like these. But it was a thought. He hoped his appearance wouldn't frighten his mother. He'd have to tell her right away that he wasn't ill. Not really. He'd only been fired. He would have to get work quickly, though. It was a good thing that it was the busy season in tailoring. He would be taken on elsewhere. He did not bother to consider for the moment what he had really accomplished in throwing away his job. It was something he had wanted to do. He had wanted to stop the foreman. He had wanted to change things. He was young. He was quick. He wanted to bring a girl home to his parents. And that is it for that part of chapter 5. That encompassed part of page 65 and part of page 70. So thank you again for patiently sitting by for my reading of this part of the chapter. I hope to do more recordings and maybe some edits. And honestly, it's been tough. It's really been really, really tough on myself and the family. Canada hasn't been nice to immigrants like myself. In any case, that's neither here nor there. If you've liked my reading, please leave a like and subscribe. It helps with this small channel. I hope to be able to upload something either here or on my gaming channel at Pixel Broadside, uh, Pinoy Broadside Gaming. So if you were interested in what I've been up to on the gaming side, you can go there. Otherwise, that's pretty much it. I hope that, you can come back maybe next time that I upload something. Sit back and I hope that I can make you, dear viewer, forget about the troubles of the world, even for a few short minutes. And anyway, thank you, and go out there and make the world a better place, especially for small people like myself. Bye bye, take care, and hopefully see you soon and again.